Hello and welcome to the CSPC interview series. My name is Stéphanie Tremblay and I'm a postdoctoral researcher and CSPC volunteer. And today I am joined by Dr. Allison Sekuler, the president and chief scientist at CABI, so the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. The CSPC is very thankful for CABI's support and for your support as an active member of the CSPC community. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much.
So let's start with our first question.
Sure.
So CABI supports innovators and entrepreneurs that work to improve brain health and aging. So from your perspective, what are the key ingredients of a successful innovation ecosystem in this space?
I think a successful innovation ecosystem in this space requires successful innovators, first of all. And for that, the people need to be really passionate about what they're doing. And what I've seen in folks who are the most successful innovators are people who have a sense of purpose in what they're doing. So it's not an intellectual exercise as much as they're really trying to make a difference in the world. So that's number one. I think the next part that you need is obviously having the right kind of innovation community. So I could have the world's greatest idea for an innovation, and maybe it will change the world. But if there aren't people out there in the world who are willing to accept it and to adopt it, it's not going to go anywhere. So we have to understand from the very beginning, not just, is this an idea I think is good, but is it an idea that's going to be accepted? And so that co-design, I think, is a really important element of success in the community. And then, of course, funding. I mean, what we end up seeing is that there's so many ideas that come, this far, and then there's not enough training for people in terms of how do I turn this from idea into impact? How do I start thinking of myself not just as a researcher, but as an innovator, as an entrepreneur? So there's that training that's required, but then also the funding to get from here to here. And that's really the gap that CABI is helping to fill. So we're laddering people up along the way. So we're not funding in the sense of the foundational research, but once something gets to the point where it could be an idea that will really have impact, we're really trying to help to make sure people have the skills in place to be able to think of themselves as entrepreneurs, and also to provide that funding to do the real world testing and the validation, working in workflows, and then helping them to spread and scale and adopt. So when we think about it, we think about not just pushing ideas out, we think about push and pull, right? So some of our programs are really supporting innovators, creating their innovations and their programs, and other things that we're doing are really building that community of innovation. So we've got both the innovations coming out there, but also the receptors for them. And we think it's important to have them connected as early as possible.
Thank you so much. So yeah, the innovators, the community, and then getting them to find the funding.
Yeah.
Thank you. So CABI bridges research, industry, and care settings. What are some of the biggest barriers that you've seen when translating brain health research into real-world applications? And how can organizations like CABI, for instance, help to overcome these barriers?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple places that we often see innovators fall down. One is, as I mentioned before, having an idea that they think is going to change the world, but they haven't tested it yet with the community that should be using it. So the lack of engagement between the innovators and the end user community, we really like to see co-design from the very beginning, from this sort of design and development all the way through, the validation and then the spread and the scale. It has to be there at every single stage, and that's something that is often missing. If you want to succeed, start with co-design as early as possible. The other place where we sometimes see folks falling down is in understanding what is the right kind of path. They might think, they're going to sell to individual consumers, or they might think that they'll be selling to, long-term care homes or hospitals or government suppliers. But they don't really understand, because if they're coming out of science, they don't necessarily know that they need to have a broader interdisciplinary team to support their innovation work. So it's great if you've got the science background, but you really want to be partnering with folks with a business background, for example. And then you have to understand procurement and the regulatory processes and all of those. So CABI helps by bringing together, first we have certain training programs for folks all the way from graduate students and undergrads through seasoned innovators. But we also have a community of advisors that can be providing support, a coaching community And we also provide all sorts of services to the folks that we fund. One of the places, I was just at a meeting today, and one of the issues that came up there was you might have an innovation and not be able to have the right place to be doing the testing for it. So it may be, especially in today's world of AI, you need a lot of data. And how do you get the data? So we have hundreds of partners across Canada and internationally, and we know who are the reliable partners. So we can make sure for your innovation, you are partnered with just the right sort of group so that you can get done what you need to get done. So there's a couple of different places, and CABI is really trying to fill those important gaps.
I see. I'm sure this support and these resources are really helpful to the scientists. Yeah. So you've been a strong advocate for equity and inclusion in science and innovation. How does CABI ensure that age, gender, and cultural diversity are reflected in the design and adoption of brain health technologies? And if you have some, could you share an example of an innovation that really embodies this approach and shows how inclusive design can change lives?
Yeah, I think we have it just in our DNA in CABI that, because we're focused on aging and brain health right away, that is an area that is often overlooked, right? And so because we work to make sure that there is connection with the end user for all of our innovators from the very beginning, that is one way that we're making sure that the design is going to be as inclusive as possible. We started with a small seniors advisory panel, which was a group of really dedicated folks that would come every 2 weeks and meet with innovators. And then we broadened that to be our lived experience advisory panel, or LEAP, which now has thousands of people on the platform all across the country. And we designed it that way so that we would have diversity, both geographical diversity, language diversity, as well as cultural and racial diversity. We also have worked very extensively with groups, indigenous communities and so on. And so we have, if there's a suggestion for something that's coming in for an innovation, and it has to do with indigenous populations, we want to make sure that there are co-design aspects of it with indigenous peoples. It's not being done on their own. We also, I think just because of the very nature of how our funding programs work, when you look at the numbers of small and medium enterprises in Canada that are run by women, it's somewhere on the order of about 18%, right? It's very few, relatively speaking. But when you look at the numbers of projects that CABI has funded that have women as leads, it's about 50%. It's pretty close to 50%. And similarly, when we look at the numbers of projects that have other underrepresented groups, it's again about that level. So we're seeing often it's the majority are led by folks from equity deserving groups. And I don't know what the secret sauce is there. It may be just, we do try to reach out to groups like the Canadian Black Scientists Network and others to make sure that there's awareness of the programs. But I think it's also just the nature of working in the care industry. There tends to be more of an emphasis there. And we have specifically, for example, created a new area of focus in women's brain health and femtech, which obviously is probably going to attract more folks who identify as female, and they have that lived experience. But it's been really gratifying to see how well people from diverse backgrounds are succeeding in this field of aging and brain health and making a big difference.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure there's diversity of perspectives are really enriching this space. Thanks for your answer. So CABI has been described as a driver of Canada's emerging brain economy. That was at the G7 recently. Could you explain what the brain economy means, first of all, for people that haven't heard of it?
Yeah.
And why it's such an important concept for Canada?
So the brain economy actually comes out of this bigger idea of brain capital, right? And which was a term that was coined by a Canadian. Really what brain capital is the combination of brain skills, so people having the ability to use their brains in the right way, and brain health, which means having healthy brains. I like to also say it should have brain supports, because you can have a neurological disability that keeps you from being able to make the best use of your brain. But to keep it simple, we'll say it's brain skills plus brain health. And And what that really means is that if we could make sure that every person in Canada or around the world is able to be trained to make the use of their brain as well as they can and has the healthiest possible brain for them, that will benefit Canada. It will benefit the economy. And what do I mean by that? In the case of dementia, for example, you can do economic cost analyses of what is the cost economic to society of dementia on an annual basis in Canada. And that analysis has come out to be about $40 billion a year. And why is that? It's not just the direct care of the cost, it's also the fact that when someone's diagnosed with dementia, 2 or 3 people are diagnosed as caregivers. They often have to come out of the workforce along with the person living with dementia. And then they're not able to contribute to the best of their capacity. Obviously, the person who has a neurological disorder, dementia in this case, is also not going to be able to contribute as much. And so that has an impact not just on people's health and well-being, but on the Canadian economy, on the GDP. And so if we could be investing in people's brain health and investing in the training to have them use their brain in the best possible way, we would be not only giving people better lives, but we would be contributing to the productivity and sustainability and economy of Canada, which is what we need right now. We need to be able to sort of make sure that every Canadian is contributing to the best of their ability. And to do that, I don't think of it as spending on brain health. I think of it as investing in brain health. Because if you're investing in people's brain health and their brain skills, it will be giving back to the economy. And that's really, we need to build not just with bricks, but with brains as well.
So looking ahead, how can Canada better position itself as a global leader in brain health innovation, and what policy levers do we need to make that happen?
Yeah, Canada is a leader in brain health innovation, whether we know it or not. Canada punches above its weight in neuroscience, and it always has. Canada also punches above its weight in artificial intelligence, which grew out of the neuroscience field, really, here in Canada. And those two drivers together are really helping us move things forward. I think what we need to do to maintain that lead is first have a little bit of faith in ourselves and recognize, how strong we are in this area. We're consistently ranked as one of the leaders in both brain health research and neuroscience, as well as in artificial intelligence. But we also need to be sure that we are providing the right kind of funding to be able to do the scale of the programs that we need to be able to move things forward. Because, Canada has, I think, unfortunately, a deserved reputation as being a country of pilots, where you get $25,000 and you get $25,000, and you can do little things piecemeal, but it doesn't get you where you need to go. And so what we're doing in CABI is looking to see, okay, if we've got several different groups working together in a similar area, how do we bring those innovations together? Because by working together, that's where we're going to get the power. When you have just duplicative pilot projects over and over, and they're not being adopted and scaled, then we're not going to get anywhere. So to get where we need to go, we need to work together across different disciplines, across the entire country, and to make sure that we are having the right kind of infrastructure in place, that it's not just about, I'm going to collect data today and then tomorrow have an innovation, but it's with the foresight that doing the foundational science, we don't necessarily know where it's going to lead us. And sometimes you just have to collect a lot of data and then let the math do its magic for you in terms of artificial intelligence and sort of the computation. And we don't have that infrastructure in place right now. If you look at a place like Japan, so I'm the Canadian lead right now for the International Brain Initiative, and we've got members from all over the world. And when we look across the world, in Japan, they do have MRI systems everywhere. You can't sort of go down the street without bumping into an MRI. Here you can't go down the street without bumping into a cannabis shop. There it's an MRI system, right? And everyone's getting MRIs basically like every 2 years. And yes, it's to do brain health checkups, but it's also being used in data, right? We have people in the Yukon, for example, who don't even have cell phone service. Forget about access to MRI. So how do we make sure that we're collecting the data that can be used to support people's health, but it's also being collected in a way that can then feed into the systems to help us on a large scale really understand what's happening in terms of neuroscience and brain health across the entire population. So I think we need a lot more coordination, but we also need to think again about having, again, I think come back to this idea of don't just build with bricks and bridges, you want to also build with brains. Think about a national program that really is investing in getting the data that we need to be able to move forward. And it's not enough for you to apply for a grant and me to apply for a grant and hope that we're going to talk to each other. And it's not even enough, the sort of platform grants that are available, they're not enough money. And you also need infrastructure everywhere. So I think we have to think as a country about what is it that we need to be doing together collectively, really to be able to reach that next level and to play on the international field. I think we have this huge opportunity. We're looked at, especially these days, with our excellence in equity and diversity and inclusivity, our excellence in AI, our excellence in neuroscience. We are at the right point in time to capitalize on that, but it's going to take change at the highest level. And if governments don't step up, both the federal government and provincial governments, and say, look, put aside any differences, we have to work together. This is a national priority, and it will, yes, improve brain health, but also improve the economy. There's a reason to do this. I think that that's what's really needed, and this is the moment in time we have to make sure that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. We need to really coordinate these efforts. So just one last question, and we'll go over it quickly. So what is your opinion on the value of the Canadian Science Policy Centre and its position in the community as a connection hub, knowledge mobilizer, and talent incubator in the science and innovation policy landscape?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan, as you probably know. I've been coming for many years to the CSPC meetings and learn something new every single time. For a group like CABI, it's really useful for us to be coming to the meetings because we hear the snapshot in time of what the concerns are from the people that we're trying to serve, from the researchers, from the scientists, from the policymakers, from innovators. Everyone's gathered together. So just as we were saying before, we need the different groups to be working together. This is one of the few places and the few times during the year in Canada where everyone is together and we're talking about these big important issues. So for us, it's really helpful to help us plan, like see where are the gaps, where do we need to fill in those gaps, where can we help to support Canadians so that we can achieve what we need to achieve. And without the CSPC, it would be so much harder to get that information. And it's also a place where other like-minded organizations, we're all coming together and we meet here. So this is also where a lot of that work gets done in making the plans on not just talking and doing white papers, but actually every single day that we're here, we're having multiple meetings with colleague organizations and others saying, okay, this is the action that we're going to be taking. So I really can't say thank you enough to the CSPC for the work that they do. It's phenomenal, and I don't know anything like this. I'm from the States originally. There's nothing like this in the US. And I think, again, it's something that can really help Canada take this leadership position that it should be taking right now.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.